Once upon a time, an old king lay on his deathbed, worried only about his young son, Prince, who he feared was too inexperienced to rule wisely. Summoning his loyal servant Faithful John, the king implored him to guide and protect the prince after his passing. "Promise me," he said, "to teach him everything he needs to know and shield him from harm. But above all, do not let him see the portrait of the Princess of the Golden Dwelling. Should he see it, he will fall deeply in love and face grave dangers for her sake." Faithful John swore to uphold the king's wishes even at the cost of his life. Comforted, the king died in peace. After the king's funeral, Faithful John fulfilled his promise. He showed the young king the palace and its treasures, but avoided the forbidden chamber containing the portrait. However, the prince grew curious and demanded entry. Faithful John hesitated but ultimately relented, opening the door with a heavy heart. The moment the prince laid eyes on the portrait, he collapsed, overwhelmed by the beauty of the princess. Faithful John revived him, but the prince declared he would die if he could not win her love. "You must help me," he begged. Faithful John devised a plan. Knowing that everything in the princess's world was made of gold, he had artisans craft exquisite golden artifacts, vessels, animals, and strange figures. Disguising themselves as merchants, Faithful John and the prince sailed to the princess's kingdom. Faithful John approached the palace first, displaying the treasures to a maidservant who brought him to the princess. The princess, captivated by the golden wonders, expressed a desire to see more. Faithful John convinced her to visit the ship where the prince awaited. As the princess admired the treasures aboard, Faithful John ordered the ship to sail away. The princess, realizing she had been taken, was distraught. The prince revealed his identity and confessed his love, explaining his desperate actions. Moved by his sincerity, the princess agreed to marry him. Their journey home was joyous, but danger loomed. One day, as Faithful John played music on deck, he overheard 3 ravens discussing the prince's fate. The first said, "When they reach land, a chestnut horse will appear. If the prince mounts it, it will carry him away forever unless someone else shoots it dead." The second added, "Even if the horse is killed, a poisoned bridal garment will await the prince in the castle. If he wears it, he will burn to death unless someone burns the garment first." The third raven warned, "During the wedding dance, the princess will collapse and die unless 3 drops of blood are drawn from her right breast and spat out. Anyone who reveals these warnings will be turned to stone." Faithful John resolved to protect the prince, even at great personal cost. Upon landing, a chestnut horse approached. The prince moved to mount it, but Faithful John shot the horse. Though puzzled, the prince trusted his loyal servant. Later in the castle, Faithful John burned the poison garment just as the prince reached for it. The court murmured against him, but the prince defended John's actions. During the wedding, as the couple danced, the princess collapsed. Faithful John rushed to her, drew 3 drops of blood from her right breast, and spat them out. The princess revived, but the prince, unaware of the sacrifice, had Faithful John imprisoned for treason. Before his execution, Faithful John explained his actions and the raven's warnings. As he finished, he turned to stone. Grief-stricken, the prince and princess placed the stone figure in their chamber, mourning their loyal servant. Time passed, and the couple had twin sons who brought them great joy. One day, while playing with the children, the prince lamented, "If only I could bring Faithful John back to life." To his astonishment, the stone spoke, "You can restore me, but it will cost you what you hold dearest, your children." Torn between duty and love, the prince chose to save Faithful John. He sacrificed his sons, sprinkling their blood on the stone. Faithful John was restored to life, and in gratitude, he revived the children by reattaching their heads and healing their wounds. When the queen returned, the prince confessed everything. Though horrified, she rejoiced to see both faithful John and their sons alive. From that day on, they lived happily, bound by loyalty, love, and sacrifice.